deep tech I see is really important for the future of New Zealand's economy. We can create the knowledge here, create the value in New Zealand, and export our ingenuity out into the world.
I mean, until recently, I didn't know what deep tech was, and I didn't realize I was doing it. But certainly the reason I care about it is I can see that in New Zealand, we can solve the big challenges.
Good day, everybody, and welcome to the very first inaugural episode of In the Deep podcast, your Aotearoa Deep Tech podcast. Today, and for most of these episodes, I'm going to be your host, Sam Harris, and I'm here with the other two co-hosts, Daniel Mak and Aaron Marshall. So, Aaron Marshall, could you please tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure, Sam. So I'm Aaron. I'm a professor of chemical engineering and a co-founder of two deep tech companies here in New Zealand. Very excited to be part of this podcast and discuss and share thoughts about the ecosystem here. What about you, Daniel? Give us a bit of background.
Yeah, so I'm Daniel. I'm currently a research associate at the University of Canterbury. I also came out of chemical engineering, although I transitioned into electrical engineering and biology. Went real cross-discipline. I've just finished up my PhD. I'm in the closing stages, and I'm really interested in commercialization of my research. So I'm working on spinning it out and creating a startup company myself, following in the footsteps of people like Aaron. And I've also been involved with the McDermott Institute, working as the commercialization and industry engagement rep, where I got to network with a whole bunch of cool people across New Zealand, learning about their experiences in commercializing deep tech and science coming out of universities. Sam, how about you?
Kia ora. I'm Sam. I was born and raised in Christchurch, New Zealand, and I moved to Otago University to study down here. And to be honest, I'm kind of like a baby, or maybe even just adolescent, in terms of like the science branch and science learning, as I'm just a PhD student, and I work on solar dyes, so like molecules that we put in solar panels, and I study them using this thing called spectroscopy, where basically we use lasers to see if the dyes will work well as solar panels or various other technologies, which are really, really cool, which maybe I'll get to talk about at a later point. But I don't have much to do with commercialization at the moment, but I would very much like to learn, and that is also my role in this podcast, is that I am the seeker of knowledge. I wish to ask all of the questions and learn all of this material that everyone that we're going to have on is so willingly going to give us. So, Daniel, what do we think is the purpose of this podcast? Why are we making it? What makes it so important for us to make this?
Yeah, so I guess the three of us here, know a little bit about deep tech. For the audience, deep tech is kind of a buzzword that incorporates a whole lot of technology that involves science and engineering, a whole lot of research, things like that. It's more to differentiate that side of technology from things like digital tech. So it's quite different trying to start up a company that needs to build a full factory versus a digital tech company that might start off with an app or a website and then scale up by buying new servers and things like that. So deep tech is this really different beast, and the idea of this podcast is that we can share what deep tech is with everybody out there, help people understand what's going on, particularly here in the New Zealand deep tech ecosystem, why it's exciting, what's cool about it, and why people should try and get involved.
Absolutely. You can kind of think about it about like futuristic, science-heavy kind of tech, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
I like to think of it as science that costs, millions and millions of dollars to get to a point where we can actually start selling stuff.
Yeah. Cost millions and millions of dollars to make tens or hundreds of millions of dollars.
Exactly.
Heavy investment, but heavy output.
yeah, very heavy, and often it takes a long time to get to the point where you've got output, but the ultimate rewards are really, really great. So what sort of people will we be talking to on this podcast?
So we'll be talking to like a bunch of like really interesting people, all the way ranging from academics to entrepreneurs to CEOs, CTOs as well, other people that are working in startups that include deep tech and other things.
And we'll also be talking with people who fund those ventures. So the venture capital firms, VCs, that put the money in, take on a lot of the risk. And hopefully we'll be able to talk to some government or organizations that are in the supporting ecosystem. So we're going to get views from across everybody that helps build these deep tech companies, and yeah, bring their knowledge and share it off with everyone watching.
It's a very team-oriented topic, isn't it? You need a lot of people from
Takes
a lot
village,
of places,
right?
with a lot of backgrounds to come up with these things. So what is it that makes us care so much about deep tech? Why do we think it's so cool? Daniel, maybe we can start with you.
Yeah, so I mean, deep tech I see is really important for the future of New Zealand's economy. We're moving into a world where we've got a whole lot of issues: climate change, energy security, manufacturing security, things like that, that we need solutions for. And deep tech is how we're going to solve a lot of those problems. And if we don't do the deep tech here in New Zealand, it's going to be done elsewhere, and we're going to have to spend a lot of money importing solutions that people have come up with overseas. So we have the opportunity now to flip that. We can create the knowledge here, create the value in New Zealand, and export our ingenuity out into the world. And that's really going to drive New Zealand's economy in the future. Aaron, thoughts on that?
Yeah, what I care about. I mean, until recently, I didn't know what deep tech was, and I didn't realize I was doing it. But certainly, the reason I care about it is I can see that in New Zealand we can solve the big challenges, and we've got the capabilities to do that. And I sort of sometimes think, why sit around, writing publications or something like that when we could actually make a difference? And particularly make a difference in terms of developing more talent, because I don't think any of us individually can necessarily solve some of these big issues. But together, when one of us does something small in sort of the deep tech space, we can inspire other people to also try things. So I care about it because we're solving problems.
Absolutely.
What about you, Sam?
I fully agree. I think in Aotearoa, we are very privileged in kind of multiple ways. We have a very low population in Aotearoa, only between 5 and 6 million people, which is nothing if you consider the land mass and the kind of economy that we have. We're not like back where we're quite at the forefront of the globe and of technology. And as a result of our very low population, we have a lot of really, really talented Kiwis, a lot of people that have a lot of skills, know what they're doing, but also know what they're doing in a very broad context. They have so many skills and so much knowledge that they can apply to so many amazing ideas. And so that's what really gets me excited about deep tech in Aotearoa, is because we have these really cool people and we have the capability of exporting and creating and innovating this incredible deep tech, like this futuristic science-based deep tech that will not only improve the environment and the economy in Aotearoa, but also the world. Like we have so many cool companies. Like my favorite company, for example, currently is OpenStar. OpenStar is a fusion lab. Basically, they're making a mini sun with the goal of producing power, and they're doing that in Wellington, in Aotearoa, and I just think it's really, really cool. And there's so many other big international projects that get so much more funding elsewhere, but because we have this talent right here in New Zealand, we are more than capable of doing it too. And I think it's really important that we get get the news out there, get people excited about this really cool tech that we're creating.
Yeah, I love that example. I mean, one of my favorite companies is Daisy Lab, who are essentially making sort of milk-like proteins synthetically. And one of the things I really like about them is in New Zealand, there's a whole bunch of regulatory constraints on doing, sort of, I guess it's like genetic engineering. I'm not sure of the correct terms, but and these guys just went, you know what, we're going to do it, and we're going to essentially take, avoid the cow and make milk. And given that New Zealand has a very agricultural-based economy, I love the fact that these guys are taking this on. I just think it's really inspiring to see that sort of thing.
Back to your roots,
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Daniel, what about you?
My favorite company, it's a place called Precision Chroma. And the reason for that kind of goes to your point earlier, Aaron, when you were talking about, if one person does something in this ecosystem and then other people can see what they've done. And so for me, there's a lot of companies out there that I've seen start up, Discovery, OppoBio. But for me, Precision Chroma was one where I knew the founder, Sean, as he was going through that whole startup phase when he was out seeking investment. I was catching up with him for coffees, learning about how it was going. And, I saw him get investment, start the company, start hiring people, raising money, completing milestones and all that. And that was really inspiring for me to be able to see his journey, see what he's done, and try and emulate that myself. And still on that journey to try and follow in his footsteps fully. But yeah, Precision Chroma, for me, that's a personal connection there. And alongside other ones like OppoBio and Zincovery and a whole bunch of other companies that I've seen start up. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
I guess that's kind of like the purpose of this podcast, right? Is to inspire people and get that information out there, get the accessibility to the information, and the public know how cool Aotearoa is and what we're doing.
On that, so what do we need to supercharge the New Zealand deep tech ecosystem? This is a question we're going to be asking all of our guests that come on. So we'll ask it of ourselves first. Sam, do you want to start?
Absolutely. So I think a really important aspect of the deep tech ecosystem is the publicity and the accessibility to information. The more people that know and hear about these incredible ideas, the more investment that's going to be able to be put in it, the more inspiration for other people to start up their own startups and companies and ideas and inventions, the more inspiration also to join those companies. We have a very lucky position in Aotearoa where we have so much talent that we can apply to all of these. Daniel, what do you think is one thing we could do to supercharge the Aotearoa deep tech ecosystem?
For me, it's all around the talent. We kind of mentioned this a bit before, but we have a lot of talent here in New Zealand, particularly in our universities, doing STEM degrees, other degrees as well, business. There's a lot of degrees that could help grow the deep tech ecosystem. And it's about giving them the opportunity to do what they want to do things that will add a lot of value to New Zealand, whether that's starting up the company themselves or, the more startups we have, the more positions will be available so that our graduates from universities can step into these high value, high tech roles rather than going off overseas, right? So we're making New Zealand a place where talent wants to live. That's a famous Sir Paul Callaghan quote from his talk to the Royal Society. I think that really resonated with me. I think, yeah, I want New Zealand to be somewhere that talent wants to live because I want to live here, I guess, yeah. Aaron. your thoughts on supercharging the New Zealand
Supercharging.
economy?
I mean, I think both of those things were brilliant things. For me, it comes down because I've, have a couple of startup companies. That the thing that I can see which would help immediately is places where we can build these companies. So infrastructure. Normally, a lot of this deep tech stuff starts in university labs with, great PhD students and things like that. And because most of the technology requires, significant scale up, transitioning from, a small lab bench to a pilot plant or something like that is really challenging and really expensive. And so if we had more spaces available where we could easily transition from university into, we'll call it the real world, it would make the lives of startup founders a lot easier. I mean, even things like health and safety infrastructure and, places where we can store chemicals, all that kind of stuff normally doesn't exist in, rentable space around our cities. A good example of space that does exist like this is like the Outset building in Auckland. They've got great facilities where you can essentially rent space and have access to lots of this. And also there's a bunch of like-minded people around. So that also supports the sort of growth. So you don't need to reinvent the wheel every time you come across a problem. So I think that sort of thing's really important. And unfortunately, it's not for a single company to build this space. We need sort of buy-in from lots of people to do it. So that's the one thing I'd love to see in New Zealand.
Building a whole bunch of deep tech hubs across the country. Yeah.
Yeah.
That would be,
and because people know about those spaces and, know that that's where you can go to do, big risky stuff. And I think that would be exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. All right.
Speaking of exciting, we have a few episodes coming up. For example, the next episode we have special guest Justin Hodgkiss on, who is both an entrepreneur and an academic. Balancing those two worlds can't be very easy, so we'll be asking him some questions about that. And then later on, Daniel, you're giving an interview with...
Yes, I'll be giving an interview with Olivia Ogilvie from OppoBio. That's one of the companies I mentioned earlier. She's a quite inspiring founder working in the future of foods. Yeah.
Well, that's going to be exciting.
Absolutely. All right. Well, that's it for this episode, our introductory episode to In the Deep. We hope you enjoyed it and gained a little bit of knowledge about the deep tech ecosystem here in New Zealand. And hopefully you'll join us on the journey as we learn more about what's going on across the country.
Thank you for listening.
Perfect.
Yeah.